Thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. It's unbelievable for me to think that a year ago I was flying home. Like this week, I was flying home from Nepal after spending 8 weeks attempting to climb Everest, which by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I think quite a few of you on this call are aware of the things that I've pursued in my life. And it's been a lot of big things, and this is certainly the biggest thing. So I'm honored to be able to share my experiences with you and what my takeaways were and how I got there. I think that there's been a ton of questions about how long did you train and what was it like and what's next and what are you up to. And so I think like the first thing to cover is just all the beautiful foundations that I have in my life around me and the support network that I have. And you guys in my community are certainly part of that. So thank you. And I wanted to, give a shout out to people that helped me on my trip specifically to Everest and helped me daily in my job as a real estate agent. So Joe Massey, good friend of mine, Castle and Cook Mortgage, he helped sponsor my trip to Everest. I've closed a lot of deals with Joe over the years. If you're in the Denver area and you're looking for a good mortgage broker, Joe's your guy. Castle and Cook Mortgage is national, so if you're not in the Denver area, check them out. Solid. I'm also honored to be working with EXP Realty. So when I got back from Everest last year, I switched companies, and now I'm with EXP. And EXP is an international company. It's got a huge reach. And here in Denver, we've got a team called the Super Agent Collaborative that I'm super fortunate to be a part of. And our mission statement stands directly in line with my personal mission statement, which is to inspire people to be successful, both professionally and personally. I couldn't think of anything better than to encourage everybody to live their very best lives and do it so powerfully that you inspire everybody around you to step up their game too, just to level up. So if you're in the real estate world and you're thinking that your support network in your office or your brokerage or your company or whatever is not helping you to level up every day, give me a shout. Reach out to us. Let's talk about it. I'd love to tell you what we're up to. I'm surrounded by coaches and authors and personal and professional development specialists, and it's a real honor to work with these guys every day. So the title of this whole thing, Dreams, Discipline, and Resilience. And I think that over the next hour or so, we're going to break each one of these three things down into a lot of detail and to help you understand the tools that fall under these categories that help me get up the biggest mountain on the planet and see if you can apply those to some aspects of your life as well. So I think that I'm going to ask you to do some stuff here up front, just some house cleaning stuff to get us all on the same page. And this may be stuff that you're not used to Zoom presenters doing. I don't know. We'll give it a try and see if it'll work. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do, we're going to do a little bit of yoga because it's a huge foundational part of my life. And I think it's a huge part of what has had me have the successes that I've had. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is just sit up nice and tall in your chairs. If you're feeling bold and spicy, even just stand up and get away from your chair. And then I want you to become aware of the ground beneath your feet. And I want you to become aware of any surfaces that you're touching. Just feel your skin touching the surfaces that it's touching. If you're comfortable closing your eyes, go ahead and close your eyes. And just start letting go of the day's events. Start letting go of everything outside of your personal space. And just start bringing your awareness into your office, into your personal space. Just take a moment to be with your breath. Start to become aware of your breathing. Become aware of your feet touching the ground. Try to breathe through the center of the earth. Nice deep inhalations in through the nose. Possibly lengthening your exhalation, just letting go. Nice deep breathing. Feeling the ground, feeling the air, being present with yourself. One more deep round of breath. Good. And then just let's open our eyes back up. And I want you to find your picture, the picture of you on the screen, right? You can see yourself on these Zoom calls. Find that picture and look at yourself. And I want you to say out loud, you're all on mute, so nobody on this call can hear you. But I want you to say, you are amazing. Practice it. I'm amazing. I'm amazing. I can do anything. Say it like you mean it. Look yourself in the eye. You've got a video camera staring at you, and there's no greater challenge than to increase your self-confidence right now. You're amazing. We're all amazing. Everybody here is amazing. The fact that you got out of bed today and you've got this body and this mind is amazing. Yeah. Try that on as often as you need to. I would encourage you to maybe even at the top of every hour, if you're sitting in your office, remind yourself that you're amazing. So a little bit about me. I've been a professional athlete. I've done over 200 triathlons. I've been to Ironman 3 times. I've climbed 3 of the highest 7 summits. Hey, Mark, can you mute yourself? I've been a strength and conditioning specialist, a high-level personal trainer for about 30 years. Let's see, I've been in real estate almost 20 years now. It's been phenomenal. And I think like the stuff that drives all of this for me comes back to things that I learned when I was like 14 and 15 years old back in high school. And it was yoga. And I think it's all yoga. Like a lot of people have asked me in the last year, like, oh man, you've got this incredible story. You need to write a book. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing that. I'm in the middle of writing a book. I got pages and pages of notes everywhere. And well, what's your book going to be called? And I say, I think it's going to be called It's All Yoga. Everything's yoga. So for those of you that haven't studied yoga or practiced yoga, yoga literally means to yoke. It means to yoke the mind and body together. Another Sanskrit interpretation from early on, we're talking 3,500, 4,000 years ago, is discipline. And the discipline to connect your mind to your body, that your two most simple baseline God-given tools, your mind and your body. And that if you have the discipline to bring those two things together, you'll be unstoppable. So I've been practicing yoga since I was 14 years old. I was super fortunate to have a mom that introduced me to yoga early on before it was cool. I mean, this was like back in the 70s. Yeah. So, and then I was quickly introduced to meditation after that. And yoga is typically a gateway to meditation as well. And again, when I look through my whole life and all of the things I've pursued and all of the dreams that I've had, to me, it always comes back to this simple idea of bringing my mind back into my body and being present with my body, and then setting my visions to what's possible and realizing, just like my good friend Bob Proctor says, the only limits in our life are the ones we impose on ourselves. And I think if we take a minute, we'd all agree that this is totally true. Yeah. Your ceiling is only as high as you make it. So this presentation about dreams, I think it's important. I think a lot of us, right, get caught up in this idea that maybe it's just this like top definition here, right? Emotions occurring during sleep. Yeah, that's good. That's true. That's valid. You know what? I like this second one. Goal or purpose. And I like that it goes into directed effort. Yeah. So I think that a lot of us have had dreams and maybe still have dreams. And I'd like to remind you that it's never too late to dream. Right. And I think that one of the things that, we talk about when we talk about dreams is that they occur during sleep, or they're kind of vague, or they're unreachable, and that it's just a dream instead of something that can take concrete form. And I'm going to talk about the difference between dreams and goals and how goals feed into dreams. So you've got a dream, right? So when I was 16, I got introduced to mountaineering. I did a Colorado outward bound school here in the Rocky Mountains and outside of Denver here up by Vail. And I spent 28 days climbing, backpacking, and I was hooked. It was like, wow, man, I was pushed really, really hard physically. I was pushed really, really hard mentally. Daily sustainability stuff, elevation, all the challenges. And I realized, like, man, this is cool. What's the biggest thing in mountaineering ever? Mount Everest. So when I was 16, I decided I was going to climb Mount Everest. Yeah. So then what did I do? I started about setting goals, daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals. And we'll go over a timeline sheet a little later in this presentation to show you exactly how I did it, right? Goals turned into actions, right? Because as soon as you take an idea and you put it on a calendar and you put a timestamp on it, now there's got to be some sense of urgency. Yeah. So then I realized, like, hey, man, it could be kind of overwhelming or feel like a lot of work if you don't remember to have fun when you're doing it. Yeah. And so I think that when we're setting out and we're dreaming really big, ask yourself if the journey is going to be fun, or what you can do to make the journey fun, right? And then you get success, right? So again, when we think about dreams, ambiguous, never ending, it's something we desire, but we don't really commit action to. Goals is when we break it all down and we start taking measurable actions that are achievable, that push us a little bit out of our comfort zone, but are achievable, concrete, measured, right? So goals feed into dreams. Yeah. And I mentioned a lifetime lifeline that I got introduced to about that same time when I was 16. I was super fortunate to be in a high school elective psychology class. And the teacher came into us and he gave us this assignment. He said, hey, I want you guys to write down a timeline of your life. And we were like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. I'll just get really busy and I can scribble that out right now. I'm 16 years old. Here's 16 years of stuff I've done, And he said, no. Notice on the right-hand side, it says death. I don't want this to be a morbid conversation, but I want you guys to script out everything you're going to do in your entire life. Right on there how old you're going to be when you die. Huh? For 16-year-olds, that's a big task. For those of you that have kids, even now, even looking at this, you might have not considered anything like this. I think this is a super valuable tool. We've got a link to the PDF of this in the comments, so you can print it out and play around with it. I would encourage you to do it no matter how old you are. You can start dreaming, you can start setting goals, and you can accomplish them. So when I was 16, and I looked at this, and I knew I wanted to climb Everest. At that time, I also wanted to go to the Olympics. I was a nationally ranked gymnast in high school, and all the colleges were scouting me and saying, hey, you're going to go to the Olympics. So I thought, I'm probably going to go to the Olympics. I got smart, didn't go to the Olympics. Saved my joints for later. But what I recognized when I was given this assignment is that I could distinctly order everything I wanted to do in my life into two distinct categories. And one of them was the stuff that required my physical body, right? I wanted to go to the Olympics. I wanted to go to climb Everest. I wanted to be a professional athlete. I wanted to travel the world. And I made up in my mind that I had until age 50 to get everything done that required my physical body. And at age 51, I could just turn into Stephen Hawking, right? I'd be in a wheelchair and blowing a straw. My brain would still work. I could accomplish everything else. I could go get a PhD. I could work. I could, be the manager or the owner or the whatever of a company, and I didn't need my body to do that, right? And again, when you think like when you're 16 years old, 50 seems like you're on the edge of death. Like that's as old as you could possibly get, right? It's no wonder that COVID threw my timeline off by a year. I attempted Everest when I was 51, and life's not over. So Anyways, I would play around with this because I think this is a foundational tool for you, for your spouse, for your kids to play around with. What do you want to? You've got this incredible life. You're blessed with this incredible life. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? And remember, like I alluded to a little bit ago, nothing happens until it gets put on a calendar. Then there's a sense of urgency. Then you can set goals and take all the baby steps towards it. Okay, we'll be talking about that. So, oftentimes when we talk about goal setting, we ask, what's your why? Like anybody in any corporate, motivational speech has been around like, hey, find your why. Why'd you come to work today? And when we go down the why hole and we just why it out and why, I think that a lot of people come to the conclusion that they want some sort of freedom. Yeah. They want some sort of freedom. And it usually centers around making other people around you happier. I want to earn X amount of money so I can do this with my family. That's going to have me feel free and happy. They're going to feel free and happy. That's why I'm at work today. Some version of that, right? So a lot of the times it comes down to like, am I going to feel free and happy? And am I going to help the people around me feel free and happy? Typically, that's what people's whys are about. But explore what your why is. If you haven't done that recently, start whying it out around what you do every day. Why do you death scroll through Facebook? Right? Is it in keeping with your goals? Is it in keeping with your dreams? If it's not, pitch it. Okay. So my why, right? Inspire people to be the best version of themselves. We're limitless. And what that means to me really is like, I've spent my entire life looking for my ceiling, looking for my limit, my physical limit. I've put myself in incredibly challenging circumstances, the hardest athletic events on the planet to see where my limits were. And I can tell you, last year on Everest, I found them 100%. I've never suffered like I did on Everest. Never. It's so next level. It's unbelievable. We'll talk more about that. Why Everest? It's the biggest. And, I want to go big. It's what I do. I like to go big. Here's some pretty fun stats on here. 29,000 feet, right? Cruising altitude of an airplane. Yeah, would you just step out of an airplane and be able to survive? No. You need oxygen. Big part of being up that high is oxygen and how your body uses it. A small percentage of people on the globe have attempted Everest. An even smaller percentage have succeeded. This year, 2023, they put out more permits than they ever have in the history of Everest. There was like 489 or 498 permits were issued. And what you're going to see in the news, if you haven't already seen it, it's just come out in the last couple of days, more deaths this year than ever before. So 13 accounted for deaths and 4 people still missing on the mountain right now as of 5 days ago. Real deal, right? When I was there last year, there was only about 350 permits issued. The weather was great. Death count, I think last year was like 4. Yeah, it's easy to be callous about that because I was there in base camp facing those circumstances every single day. But it's very real. Yeah. And what makes climbing mountains like Everest hard is a lot of things, but the ultimate thing is oxygen. Without oxygen, everything sucks. And so, if you think about, for those of you that live in Colorado, perhaps you've climbed a 14 or perhaps you haven't, think about every time if you've visited somewhere high and you walk up a flight of stairs, what it feels like to be out of breath. And what a shock and what a surprise that is. Yeah. On Everest, even at base camp's at 17,500 feet. It's like walking around with a plastic bag over your head. It's like 50% less oxygen. Yeah. So think about that. A lot of people have a hard time even understanding what that's like. But to give you an example, when you're climbing high mountains like this, one step and you need to take at least one breath, a full breath, before you can take another step. Consider that when we left Camp 3, which is at 23,000 feet, I was taking 4 to 10 breaths per step. Yeah. So how long does it take to walk a mile? If you walked out your front door right now, 15, 20 minutes, imagine if every step you had to take 5 additional breaths before you took the next step. That mile turns into like a 4-hour, 5-hour ordeal because there's just no air. The weather is a factor. You know, here's a little example. This was our tent at Camp 4 at 26,000 feet. Sustained 60 to 80 mile an hour winds the entire time. You know, you're in the death zone. It's the real meal deal. Like the weather is, just an average day up there is 30 below zero. That's a nice day. Sun's out. It's not bad. You're wearing the right gear. Okay. So if the first lesson in this, there's the kind of 6 lessons I'm going to go through today. And the first one is the dreams and the goal setting, right? The second one is calming your monkey mind. And this goes back to yoga, right? Or some sort of mindfulness practice so that you can stay on track with your goals and your dreams. We're going to talk about the power of gratitude today. We're going to talk about the power of affirmations today. We're going to talk about why it's important to get out of your office and actually move. And when you're out moving, how much more important and valuable it is if you're outside in nature. Yeah. These are all things that help get your mind to slow down so that you can be focused on what's most important. All right. Do you have to have a yoga practice? No. You could have a tennis practice or a bike riding practice or some other physical form of activity that gets your mind into your body. Yeah, I would highly, highly, highly encourage that. Now we're going to talk about gratitudes and affirmations and the power of those things. The second big word in this presentation is discipline. Yeah, it takes a ton of it to accomplish the things that I've accomplished. And I don't think I'm special. I really don't. I think it takes a ton of discipline for every single one of us to get our asses out of bed in the morning. Yeah? Brush your teeth, take a shower, make yourself food, like the most fundamental stuff takes discipline, right? It's orderly or prescribed conduct or behavior, or what I really like, training that corrects and perfects the mental faculties. That goes hand in hand with what I'm talking about, right? How do we perfect our mental faculties so we can stay on task? And what are the system of rules that we put in place on a daily basis that help us get to our dreams? Let's talk about it. Back to time management. And again, from the corporate world, I think that everybody has a different take on time management. Try on mine and see if you can learn some things. Okay. So we talked about time management with your lifetime, which I would posit that probably 95% of people don't even have a lifetime timeline. They're just like, oh yeah, I'll get around to doing this one thing one day. Like, we're going to go to Italy. When? Oh, when I retire. When? Oh, I don't know. When I have XYZ in the bank. Okay, put it on the calendar, people. Then when we break down our life, we get into everybody has 24 hours in a day. Everybody has 7 days in a week. What do we do with it? Okay. Again, the PDFs of these files in your chat box so you can download these. Okay. So when you look at this, the top half is all of our non-negotiables, fundamentals, the basics, the stuff that we all know that we should be doing. And unfortunately, most of us fail miserably. Are you getting 10 hours of sleep and recovery out of every 24-hour period? Whoa. Maybe you get 5 of dedicated sleep time. I would encourage you, I give you permission today to block out another 5 hours every day. Bring it up to 10 that you're taking a nap, you're meditating, you're going to the spa, you're sitting in the hot tub, you're doing something that's restorative. Downtime, away from your screens, away from your family, right? Nutrition, out of every 24 hours, 3 hours? Think about it. That might seem like a lot. We're talking about the fundamentals of being the healthiest, best version of yourself. Meal prep for yourself, meal prep with the family, sitting down with the family. 3 hours out of 24 doesn't seem like a lot to ask, especially if you have a family. If you don't have a family and you're solo mission, again, give yourself permission to take 3 hours out of every day to sit down and be grateful for your nutrition and your nourishment, and food in your refrigerator and the food on your plate, and be with it. Because these top two things are what fuel everything. Sleep is the glue that holds us together. Food is the energy that lets it happen. Exercise, we all know we need it. It's critical. It's what keeps us moving. Hour and a half a day. Woo! Is that a lot? I know there's some coaches and some trainers on here. There's some athletes on this call today. And maybe an hour and a half seems about right. If you're familiar with 75 Hard, it's been around for a few years. I love that they've got an hour and a half in every day that you should exercise, and they broke it down and they say like 45 minutes inside, 45 minutes outside. And I think that's brilliant, right? Because in the earlier slide, we said being outside in nature helps slow down and calm the mind. We know exercise helps slow down and calm the mind. If you can combine two and you're exercising outside, why the heck not? It's a little more efficient that way. Family time, 2 hours a day. Huh? That's outside of meals. That's in addition to meals. Is it possible? Absolutely. Check this out, you guys. You still have 7.5 hours left over. True story. The math checks out. Yeah? My buddy Mark Santa Stevens on this call. Mark, I came up with this chart at Powerhouse Gym in Pacific Beach when I was 26 years old. I was kind of proud of it because you know what I realized? That I could work 26 hours a week, and that's when I was at my very best. And at hour 27, you get squirrel brain worthless boy. It's what I put together. And I've been preaching it ever since. We are unbelievably limitless machines. The number of synapses up here are incredible in every single one of your heads. You can work more efficiently, especially if you're focused on the top half of this chart and you're getting enough sleep and you're getting enough exercise and you're getting good nutrition. You're going to be able to do everything a lot better. Work 6 hours a day. You know, for some of you, you may scoff at that and be like, oh no, I'm winning the award for heart attack syndrome of the year. I work 12 hours a day, you know, whatever. Not necessary. It's not worth it. Yeah. Another hour and a half of recreation every day. Can you accomplish multiple things at the same time by saying that my recreation and my exercise are the same? For sure. What's that mean for a workaholic guy? Oh, I can work. It means you could work 7.5 hours. Okay. Resilience is the third part of this whole spiel. And I think that this is the gold, right? I think that anybody that's following, you know, personal professional development, if you've got a coach or a mentor or something like that, everybody has some system of time management. Everybody has some spiel about goals. You know, we can always just fire David Goggins up or something and be like, woo, let's go. Let's kick butt. You know, there's all kinds of motivational stuff out there. I think that this is the part where as a society, as human beings, the capability of a strained body to recover, right? That goes into that 10 hours of sleep every night, every day, or to jump back, to get back into what you're supposed to be doing, what your goals and your dreams are. So what happens when we fail? What happens when we have setbacks, and how do we get through those? Yeah, so this is a fun little picture of me. This was in 2016 in Peru. And I was on this 8-day trek through the mountains of Peru, and I was super arrogant. Imagine that. I was like, I'm from Colorado. I'm acclimated. I don't need to follow an acclimatization schedule because I'm already a super athlete, and we're just going to be walking in the pretty mountains for 8 days. we were walking over a 16,400 foot pass. I didn't think much of it. I took it for granted. The guide service said, "Hey, come down here and hang out in Cusco at about 11,000 feet for 3 nights to get acclimated." Well, my buddies down in Peru, I got a bunch of friends in Peru, and they said, "Hey, Cusco's cool, but you should come down to our mom's house in the valley. Mom's here, get some mom cooking, and hang out." That's what I did. I went down to 8,800 feet down in the Sacred Valley of the Incas, hung out for 3 days, had incredible food, did a bunch of yoga, did some hikes, whatever. The night before the trip, we drove up to Cusco. They dropped me off. I spent one night at 11,000 feet. The tour van picked me up the next morning. We drove me to the trailhead at 13.3. We started hiking, and within 200 yards out the van, I already had a headache. I already knew things were going south. And I knew 2 days later we were going to go over this pass. And I said, whatever, altitude sickness, I can deal with it. We're going to go over the pass. We're going to go down the backside. When you go down the backside, we're going to lose elevation, and I'll be healthy. I'll be fine. I'll be recovered. It didn't work that way. You know, I noticed the night before we went over the pass that if I laid flat on my back, there was this gurgling sound coming out of my lungs, and that's not cool. But guess what, man? If I do just like Dad does, and I stuff a bunch of pillows behind me and I sit up, gurgling goes away. Good to go. I'll treat it like heartburn. Easy solution. We go up over the pass, and I'm like, you know, screaming headache, trying not to puke, can't even drink water, just pretty miserable. And I'm like, all right, cool, we're gonna go down the backside, I'm gonna be better. We go down the backside, a couple hours later, we're having lunch, and I'm so done that I literally fall off the stool onto the ground, pass out at lunch. And when I wake up, they've got a O2 sat thing on my finger, and I'm at 68. Right? That's low. Yeah, that's like, get much lower than that. We're talking about brain damage. No O2 going to in your blood. High altitude pulmonary edema. The young guide said, "Hey, the solution is we're going to let you rest. We're going to put you on this donkey. We're going to send you across the valley to the next lodge, and you just need to rest, and then you'll be good." Okay, fair enough. I'll buy into that. You know, we weren't going up anymore. We were going across at this point. And I'm sitting on this mule going across the valley at about 15,000 feet. And it occurs to me that every single breath I take is shorter than my last breath. I'm dying. My brain is trying to do the math. Let's see. If each breath is 10 seconds long, but then the next one's only 9.98 seconds, how many breaths do I have left before I'm dead? It wasn't pleasant. I got over to the lodge, and it was me and the donkey herder dude that spoke way better donkey than English or Spanish for that matter. And we got over there, and he fires up the wood burning stove, and you know, I promptly go and sit on the toilet because I'm super sick, and I'm in and out of consciousness on the toilet, and I'm thinking, man, this is how I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be that middle-aged white guy that dies of a heart attack on the shitter. It's horrible, but statistically, that's how a lot of older white guys go. Yeah, and I'm thinking, this is gonna be me. I'm embarrassed right now. Well, I survived that for about another hour before the guide showed up, and I finally convinced him that I had HAPE, high altitude pulmonary edema. And that's when he put this oxygen tank on me. He got on the sat phone. I got back on the donkey. And 2 hours later, I was down valley in an ambulance getting carted out of there. And truth be told, with pulmonary edema, with acclimatization, any kind of altitude sickness, it only took about 700 vertical feet down the valley before I could take a full breath, and I felt fine. It's just that simple. And that being said, I did not quit. That was 2016. I knew I had like a 3 or 4 year solid workup to get onto Everest by 2020, you know, and I ended up doing Everest in 2022. So anyways, here's some other things that happened. Like, I climbed a bunch of other big mountains in my workup. And these are all examples of life happened, right? So back in 2018, I started climbing these bigger mountains. You know, I did Mount Hood, I did Mount Rainier, I did Mount Baker. I was running a small business at the time outside of real estate. And COVID showed up and crushed my small business. Millions of dollars out the door to private equity investors. My dreams of small business ownership of that industry crushed. I kept climbing. COVID came, put a huge backup on everything. All the national parks were closed, airlines were shut down, we couldn't travel. So like I was slated to climb Denali, had to push that back a full year. I got an extra year of training. Being resilient, overcoming. Okay. Climb Denali, I go down to Mexico, I climb Orizaba. 2019, I climb Aconcagua, or not 2019, I'm sorry, fast forward 2021, between 21 and 22, I climb Aconcagua. Right around that same time, why not? Let's get married. Throw in the wife and kids. 6 months prior to departing for Everest. Just another stressor, right? Resilience. I stayed focused. Okay. So here's some of those trips. All of these pictures, any guesses? This is Mount Rainier. This is a real meal deal. It's 14er. You've probably seen it out the plane window when you go in and out of Seattle. This upper left-hand corner here, this is day one. Matter of fact, this is, I don't know, 2 miles from the trailhead. And we're walking up into a blizzard with 65 pounds of crap on our backs for a 3-day trip. Yeah. This one in the lower right-hand corner, I love because I can count all these shovel handles. Yeah. Because we had to get up every hour and dig the snow off of our tents so the tents wouldn't collapse. Yeah. And we're thinking the whole time on that second night up there before our summit, we're like, there's no way in hell we're climbing this mountain. No guiding guidelines, guidebook, mountaineering book does it say walk uphill into the storm. That's just not standard practice. But these guides, they climb Rainier like 400 times. They're like, yeah, no problem. We're gonna walk uphill and climb this thing. Okay, so we did. Any guesses on what month or day this was? All right, this is 2 hours east of Seattle. This was July 7th. Ooh, it's a real meal deal, guys. If you're into mountaineering, if you're on this call because you want to do something big and push your limits in the mountaineering world, go climb Rainier. It's a good wake up call. 3 days, easy peasy, in and out. Back in Seattle, having Moscow mules, like I don't know what, like 12 hours after this picture, we're back in Seattle. Pretty cool little rotation. These are all on Denali. Yeah, so getting a little bigger, taking stuff a little bit more seriously. 20,000 feet in Alaska, wind chill below zero, crazy storms, da 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 da. We had an incredible weather window on Denali, and Denali was a great experience for me. It was super hard. Super hard. You got to carry all your own stuff. You're responsible for about 110 pounds of stuff to drag it on a sled, carry it in a backpack. Whatever. There's no Sherpas, there's no yaks, there's no goats, there's no donkeys, there's no help. You're on your own. What I learned on Denali, the resilience part about Denali, was that if you notice in almost all of these pictures, I mean, this is me on the summit, and down here in the valley are these big ass clouds. Right? Huge storm down here. But we were all up on the top, calling the families saying, hey, we summited, we're awesome, and we're booking the flights home early, we're done. Yeah, no. On this trip, we walked back down into the storm. We walked back down and at about 13,400 feet, 7,000 feet below the summit, we walked into hell. We walked into 2 guides and 1 client falling into crevasses. It was snowing so hard you could not see your walking stick when you stuck it out in front of you. That's how hard it was snowing. When you run into the guide in the snowstorm and he's got both his GPSs out and his compasses around the neck, we're in it. We're in it for real. We did hike back down to the base camp on Denali, and we were weathered out and couldn't get out of there, ran out of food. was an interesting scenario. We'd already summited. The hard part was over, and we weren't home yet. We were still in a pretty dire situation. Took 2 more days before they could get a plane in there and get us out. It's pretty crazy. Kept going, not deterred, made me stronger. Okay. During those setbacks, right? Like when I got HAPE in Peru, when I went down to Aconcagua, I got HAPE again. And I had all my family and friends in my community checking in with me and questioning, like, how crazy are you? Like, do you have a death wish? Like, what are you doing? How can you still possibly be focused on Everest? Like, there's all these signs that, your body can't handle it. And I just flipped the script around and I looked at my family and my coach and my clients and everybody around me, my friends, my spiritual guides, my doctors, my partners. I leaned into all of that energy, all of that concern, and realized that those were people who loved me and they were concerned about me, obviously. And I just took that love to say, hey, look, man, I'm going back to my big why. I want to inspire all you guys and show you that even with setbacks like high altitude pulmonary edema and COVID, all these other things, you can still go after your dreams. So I say, like, fill your spice rack. By that, I mean, get a really diverse community. Maybe in your notebook, just start jotting down, like, who is your support network, right? Who do you lean on? And there's always going to be like the top 2 or 3 people. Oh, I got my mom, or I got my spouse, or I got my emotional support chicken, or whatever the hell it is, right? Whatever it is for you, there's always going to be like those top 3, 4, 5 people, maybe. I would encourage you to really look outside of that box. And the gold in your community is probably the most diverse people in there that aren't like you. Whatever you're up to, go find somebody in your social circle that's not up to climbing mountains or not up to making $1 million, and go talk to them. See how they see you. Fill your spice rack with diversity. I think this is a huge part of us being resilient, right? Because when things go sideways, it's not the people that you would expect, but it's the outliers that are going to be like, oh, yeah, that happened to me too. Here I am. I'm alive to talk about it. Let's talk about it. Lean into your spice rack. Huh? So that's how I got, to Everest. Is I climbed a bunch of other mountains. I did a bunch of other stuff. And the walk from Lukla at 9,000 feet, which is a 45-minute plane ride outside of Kathmandu. Yeah, the walk from Lukla to this rock, Everest Base Camp at 17.5, is a 10-day walk, right? So even to start climbing Everest, you go on a 10-day backpacking trip. I don't know if any of you guys have ever spent much time backpacking, but usually like 1 or 2 nights, it's about good. You're ready to be home, ready to change your clothes, do some laundry, eat some different food, get some legitimate running water. Yeah, there's running water on the trek. The Everest Base Camp trek's pretty amazing. And the point is it takes 10 days of walking to even get to the starting line. Yeah. And at this point, like right after this picture, like literally 15, 20 minutes after this picture was taken, I started freaking out. I really did. All the tourists have to turn around at this rock, and you start walking through the mile-long Everest Base Camp, and you're there with 350 of the most fit, insane people that are just like you. And there's nobody else there. Well, a bunch of Sherpas, and those guys are all stronger than all of us put together. And all of a sudden, it gets super real, just super real. Like, wow, this is it. Like, I'm camping inside the Khumbu Glacier death zone of the Khumbu. It's one of the most deadly places in mountaineering, and your tent's sitting on the edge of it. Yeah. I mean, there's no more distractions. There's no more like, oh, we're going to go to a different tea house like we were on the trek every day. It's like, oh, now it's game on. We're here to actually climb this mountain. Yeah. So here's a cool little pictograph, right? You get past that big rock at the entrance to base camp, and you're at 17,500 feet. Yeah. Camp 1 is at 19,000. It's another 2,000 feet above 19,500. Camp 2, which is advanced base camp. Yeah. So when you're moving up the mountain. Camp 1, 19,600. Camp 2, advanced base camp, 21. Yeah. Then right up, this is like the end of the valley. And then everything goes straight up. Boop. Yeah. So Camp 3, 23,600. The famous Lhotse face. Camp 4, 26. Yeah, I spent a bunch of time up there. We'll get to that. This is a cool map to kind of put things in perspective. Yeah. And here we are, right next to base camp. Between base camp and Camp 1, you've got to go through the Khumbu. And it's just an incredible place. This thing is a glacier that moves 3 feet every day. Yeah. So it's alive. You can hear it cracking and popping and snapping. And there's avalanches coming down all around the valley all hours of the day. The distinction for me, when we were, all the climbing I've ever done, all the mountaineering I've ever done, it's always like the breakfast conversation is like, woohoo, how fast are we going to summit today? And what kind of snacks are you packing? And how much water do you need? And, does everybody's blisters, and what are we doing with your feet prep? And no, woohoo, let's go. In Everest Base Camp, the breakfast talk is about who died in the Khumbu icefall the night before. And you're going to walk right into the jaws that snatched lives the night before. It's kind of heavy. It's different. This is a really cool video. Maybe we can get the load here. And this is a great video because this is actually the route from last year. And this guy is moving really efficiently. So he's going down. And I want you to listen to his breathing. This is at 18,500, 19,000 feet. We're just going to take a little point of view walk down through the Khumbu. One thing you'll notice, I don't know the Alex Holt guy who shot this, maybe he'll see this and get upset, but he's not clipped into the safety line. He's not clipped in right now, which is a little interesting because this part's not that scary. Right? Big breathing. There's just no air. Now he's going to clip in. Yeah, and then right down here, we're going to come to one of the very best parts of Mount Everest. Because these particular things aren't really on any other mountain. Maybe occasionally, but not really. Yeah? Just jump across this crevasse, and then we come up on the fun part. The aluminum ladders. Hope your lunch is digested. This is a fun little ride. The greatest part about, I remember this ladder crossing because I went across it 6 different times. There's no air. Listen to his breathing. But the cool part about this is you got to wonder why there's 2 ladders. 2 people aren't ever going to cross one of these things at the same time. So then you got to start wondering like, oh man, did the Sherpas put 2 ladders in here because one of them's screwed up and the other one's better? Who knows? Thoughts that go through your mind. Let's see if we can. get this to advance. Here we go. So, lesson 5. Resilience is daily. There's setbacks every single day. And you've got to get back to basics and you've got to celebrate your successes. So, do you have a mindfulness practice? Can you get grounded just like we did in the beginning of this call? Like, what are you doing to slow your monkey brain down and get back into acknowledging your successes? And this is where gratitude and affirmations come in. So here's this right out of my journal a little over a year ago, May 5th of 22. This is what I was saying to myself going through the Kumbu. Every breath, inhale, I'm strong. Exhale, I'm strong. Inhale, I'm confident. Exhale, I'm confident. I'm capable and I'm doing this. I was repeating this on loop as everything around me, the circumstance, the environment dictated that I was dying, that I was terrified, that I wasn't prepared. And yet there I was. I'm doing this. And I just kept repeating that over and over and over again. Yeah. That's what got me up here to Advanced Base Camp. It's kind of a cool picture. So this is at 21.5 and you're looking up the Lhotse face. To put things in perspective, these are headlamps. These are the headlamps at Camp 3. That's another 2,000 vertical feet higher at 23.5. You go up over this bergschrund and you cruise up here, and then you go up through the yellow band, and then you go up over this ridge, and tucked up back in here is Camp 4. Yeah. Here we are, Camp 3 on the Lhotse face, 23,500 feet. Yeah. It's kind of a cool spot because these tents are literally carved out of an ice shelf, chiseled out. 1,500 vertical feet of ice straight below you. The interesting thing is that, I don't know, when people die up here, it's because they got to get out of their tent, go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and it takes about 20 minutes to put your boots and your crampons on. But when your digestive system has been jacked up for 3 weeks, and you've just been kind of like low-grade sick the whole time, oftentimes when your stomach says it's time to go to the bathroom, you don't have 20 minutes to put your crampons on. So you just leave your down booties on and you walk out of your tent to go take care of business. Your down booties don't have a lot of grip on ice. And then you just do your slide for life, 1,500 vertical feet down. And the interesting thing is, there is no bottom. Because at the bottom of the 1,500 feet is that bergschrund. And at the bottom of that bergschrund is a 700-foot deep crevasse. So you don't splat, you just keep falling into the center of the earth, never to be found again. Kind of a bummer. Here I am on the ridge line coming up to Camp 4. 26,000 feet. I've got my oxygen mask on. We started wearing oxygen back at Camp 3 at 23. So you never take this thing off. We played around with like, oh man, I just want the feeling of fresh air on my face that'll make me feel like I can breathe. After about 15 seconds of no oxygen above 23,000 feet, you start to get a pretty bad headache. After about 2 minutes, you start to black out. Ask me how I know. Yeah, tried it. So gratitudes, right? Gratitudes are the foundational root seed of confidence building. Think about it. The things that you are grateful for, your successes, your health, your wellness, your friends, your family, the roof over your head, all of those things came from successes that you've had in your life that then allow you to reflect on and be grateful for, right? So a lot of the, personal professional development guys right now, Joe Dispenza, Bob Proctor, all these guys, everybody, like, gratitudes are a big catchphrase right now. Like, oh, you need to shift your mindset out of the negative, dark, whatever, gloomy stuff And to make that mindset shift, you need to be grateful. Find something to be grateful for, and then your synapses are going to fire on that other channel. Valid. That's true. I think what we fail to recognize is that the science in there, the actual visceral part of being grateful is to acknowledge your successes and get a big, deep well of all of your successes to lean back into, just like your spice rack, your community. Your community is your external state that validates what you're doing. Your gratitudes and your bucket of successes is your internal, intrinsic state that validates that you can be confident. Think about it. Again, scribble it down in your notebook. Where have I been successful? What does it feel like? What do I feel like when I'm successful? That's what I need to be grateful for. This is the foundation of resilience. Yeah. So here we are again, 26,000 feet. It's my tent mate, Ross. This is about 5 hours before we set out to summit. This was the scariest part of the whole trip for me. We'd been up and down through the Khumbu 5 times at this point, and the wind was blowing so strong up at Camp 4 that every tent up there that didn't have human beings in it got ripped off the foundations and blown over into Tibet. And there was just endless amounts of garbage and debris that wasn't tied down, blowing in that wind into Tibet. And this night, we got about 5 or 6 hours of sleep before it was time to go in our summit tent. And Ross and I, my tent mate, later when we were back in base camp discussing this evening, and he says, I was so exhausted from thinking we were going to die that I just passed out. I kept thinking the same thing. We joked. We're like, man, what are the Tibetans going to think when they find this giant yellow North Face burrito with these 2 shredded white dudes in it 9,000 feet below on the Tibetan plateau? What's that going to be like? Are they going to eat us? They just cook us? They peel the tent off our pulverized bodies and go to town? I don't know. We were joking about that this entire night. Yeah. So here we are, sharing those jokes, me and Ross. This was the end of the trip for me. It's a little bit after this picture was taken. The guide came in, the head guide, and he said to me, "You're moving too slow. We don't have enough oxygen to take with us to cover your pace to get you to the top of the mountain." My dream was shattered. My spirit was taken from me. I cried for quite a while these guys set off, and they summited in record time, tent to tent in under 8 hours. I was thinking it was going to take me 16. They had enough oxygen for 12. Huge bummer. I still had to get down. I still had to lean back into every skill I had to be resilient, to stay alive on the walk back down that takes another 2 full days from where this picture was taken to get back down to base camp. Yeah. So lesson 6, one of my biggest takeaways from my Everest experience, like where I really screwed up, was I wasn't prepared. Yeah. I played into all my strong suits. Remember I said that Denali was an incredible experience for me? It's because Denali is super hard. It's super physically challenging. You've got to be physically strong. You've got to be able to carry a lot of weight uphill. And man, I'm good at that. I like that. I like that challenge. I like putting 40, 50, 60 pounds on my back and walking uphill. I like the idea in my mind is like when I show up in a room and I scan the room, I'll always find the biggest person in the room and I'll think to myself, hey man, if this building caught on fire or if there was an active shooting drill, could I carry the biggest person in here out? And I've always thought, yeah, that's me because I'm strong. I like to be strong. You know what? Mount Everest doesn't give a shit about how strong you are. You got to be strong up here. But muscle mass doesn't work up there. I prepared the wrong way. I prepared to be strong. And what I learned up there is that I needed to work on my weaknesses. And I should have been like running 5 miles every day. And I should have showed up there with, 30 or 40 pounds less muscle on my frame if I was going to succeed. Yeah. So, yeah, you got to push yourself. You've got to get uncomfortable, and you've got to be super real with yourself about what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Yeah. If you're in a team situation, if you're at work, if you're the project manager, I think it's important to distinguish the idea of leverage and delegation. And if you suck at paperwork, then get somebody else to do the paperwork. But if we're talking about physical goals and physical dreams and getting after living your best life, and there's some missing in there where you're stepping over what you're weak at and nobody else can pick up that slack for you, get uncomfortable. Yeah. So I think we've got a PDF of this as well in the chat box. So lessons from today, right? You've got to have goals and dreams. Yeah, you've got to set a timeline on stuff. You've got to have a plan to work within your mind and get your mind focused. You've got to have a diverse community, and you've got to be able to really lean into what daily moment to moment resilience looks like. Affirmations, gratitudes, mindfulness. What does it mean to take the next step forward regardless of the circumstance? We put on here, do the things that make you uncomfortable. Yeah. I think the internal state, the conversation of awareness is around acknowledging and honoring your strong suits. And let's get really real about where your weaknesses are and don't step over them. Yeah. Hey, man, thank you guys. Thanks for joining me. If you've got questions, put them in the chat box. Diane and I will go through them right now. This is up on the screen. I'm a coach. I'm a realtor. Joe Massey is one of the best lenders. All the QR codes go to our stuff. I couldn't do this. I would not be here if it wasn't for Diane Schell and the Kinder Collaborative. If you're looking for any kind of an assistant to make your job life easier, give her a shout. Again, the QR code works great. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was valuable. I hope that you're inspired to live your best life, to get after your dreams and make them really come true. Di, what do we got for questions?
A lot of kudos. Write the book. Pierre wants more slides. So no real questions if you want to.
Okay. So if you guys want to unmute, yes, I'll write a book. Yes, it'll be all about yoga. I might write some other book with just a bunch of stories about crazy shit I've done, but I'll integrate all that into why yoga makes a difference in all of it for me, and like that it's literally helped me achieve my dreams, but it's kept me alive in a lot of situations that I think I could have died in many situations actually. So yeah, my book will be about that. It's coming.
Looks like somebody else. Go right ahead. Pierre, you're up.
I was just going to, so in regard to the slides, each of those slides only has 2 of the actual ones you've had in the presentation, and they look great. I'd love to get a copy of them. But what's next?
Yeah, that's a great question, Pierre. I am going to go back to Everest. And to me, last year when I was sitting back down in Kathmandu journaling about my experiences, and I was all like, okay, I think 5 years is a good timeline. I think that, kind of falling back on my being 16, I'm like, oh, in 5 years, I'll only be 56 or 57. I can still do it. I'll still be young enough. But it gives me the time to train properly and get my affairs in order. And it's been a huge surprise to me giving these presentations 1 year later to realize that of those 5 years, one of them's already gone. And so now, like when you ask what's next, and I'm like, oh crap, like I'm committed to climbing Everest again in 4 years. And so, right now what's next is crushing my real estate business and just knocking it out of the park so that I've got more money in the bank than I know what to do with, and that I've got residual income coming in from various sources, so that when I do go back into climbing in the next few years, I won't have that anxiety in the back of my mind. So that's what's first. I think what's second is like what I learned from those guys that were on my team last year is, they were running like 5 to 10 miles every single day. And I hate running. I like lifting weights. So I'll probably not do any, there'll be a time when my aerobic volume of running will go through the roof and my strength training will depreciate quickly, and I'll do some kind of a be okay with myself. My morning grounding ritual will be something like, hey, I'm still a badass even if I weigh 145 pounds. Even though I like to walk around at 180 and feel confident about carrying the big guy out of the bar at the end of the night, I need to get comfortable being uncomfortable at 145, 150 pounds if I'm going to crush Everest. So that's the big thing for me to overcome, is my body image and all of that. Mark, what do you got?
More of a statement than a question, but really, I've known you for so long, and it's just nice to see you growing in this way, but also to bring to light some of the details of what it meant to do what you did. I think following you and following what you were doing while you were doing it and kind of getting some of the text message or emails back was one thing, but to visually see it was a whole different thing. And to think about every step, every breath that you had to take to get to this point, and keep your safety in mind. And then also all the negative belief system, negative thoughts that come into your head when you're crossing, which ladder do I go on, left or right? Like every step has a consequence to it. So I think it's a remarkable story, and I really, I'm proud of you. So I just wanted to say that to you.
Right on, man. Thank you so much.
We have a question from the chat from Christy. Wants you to talk about your yoga studies.
Oh, yoga. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. Gosh. Like I said, I started my mom, since I was a little kid, I would just woke up every morning to my mom doing yoga, and she'd always encourage me to do it. And I always, as a little boy, it's not for me. And then when I started getting more serious about athletics in high school, and I realized like my injuries were starting to pile up, and then I was like, oh, mom's onto something. This yoga stuff is pretty smart stuff. Like this is a way I can avoid, being injured and help recover quicker and be more mindful of how I move through life. So when I was 14, I started studying yoga. When I was 15, I was lucky enough to get taught transcendental meditation. I started teaching yoga when I was 19, like publicly, and I've just practiced it. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a daily practice, almost daily. And it's just something that, I went in 2016. I spent a month in a yoga ashram in northern India. I work for a really killer organization here in Denver, Colorado called comebackyoga.org. I would highly encourage you to check those out. We work specifically with vets. I've got an extensive amount of training in trauma-informed yoga, PTSD stuff. Prior to COVID, I was working in the PTSD psych ward at the VA hospital, working with highly damaged individuals and just getting them back to the basics of how to slow their mind down and get back in their body, and all the stuff we just covered in this presentation. It's a daily practice on the mat. And so, if you're here in Denver, I'm doing a public yoga class next Wednesday, the 7th. You can find links for that. If you follow those QR codes, you can probably find them in there. So yeah, I'm hugely passionate about yoga, and I've got a lot of opinions about it, just because I've been studying it for a long time, and I love to exercise. I don't think yoga is exercise. I'll just throw that out there right away. It's not to me. When I see somebody doing hip hop yoga or jazzercise yoga, I turn into a crusty old curmudgeon really quickly. Just about like that is not it. Like you don't, it's not, you're missing the point, man. You got to slow everything down quite a bit. I hope that helped, Christy. Any other questions, Ty?
More questions.
All right, yeah.
No questions. Tim, thanks for sharing. Your authenticity and just transparency and humility is amazing. So thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys on the mat. There's no other questions. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me. TIS Fitness Systems, EXP Realty, Joe Massey, Castle and Cook, Kinder Collaborative. Thank you, everybody. Take care.